I remember the main march. I didn't remember the exact date. So we're 5 years together, but I had they were married in March.
All the same year.
I didn't remember that.
Yeah.
It's nice to see you.
Yeah, Henry died 3 days after our 53rd anniversary.
On behalf of the Tegel family, I want to thank you all for coming today. Today we want to pay respect to Robert Leslie Tegel. Bob was born February 21st, 1944, and passed away March 2nd, 2021. He attended Harper Elementary School, Horace Ensign Junior High, Newport Harbor High, Orange Coast College, and Cal State Fullerton. If you knew Bob, you know he loved to serve other people, and he served our country. He was in the reserves, the Navy Reserves, from 1961 through 65, and active duty 65 through 67. And that's something I really appreciate, someone serving our country. He served the residents of Balboa Island as a postman for 25 years. Pretty rough duty he had, but he did it and loved it. And he served the Postal Service for 14 more years in the automotive division, helping there. He had many hobbies: bowling, ham radio operator, square dancing, dog obedience, horse and donkey cart racing. I wish I would have said that.
Just driving.
Writing, military history. He was a member of the Freedom Committee. He believed our history needs to be carried on. He's an avid reader and raised plumerias. And I know Barbara was with him on a lot of these hobbies he had. And he loved and served Barbara for just short of 56 years. And in this day and age, that's a huge accomplishment. And something that I really respect, that he served that long. So right now I'd like to ask Bob's brother Gary to come up and share a little bit of his experience with his brother Bob.
Okay, well I had to write it down because I just didn't want to forget or get messed up but just welcome to Bob's Celebration of Life. I was telling somebody today, I hate when you say funeral, it sounds so dark and dismal. And celebration of life, that's what we're here to do, is just to celebrate Bob's life. And we're going to have a time in a little bit for people to share. So I encourage you to think about stories or things that you can share with the audience here today about Bob. And so I'm Gary, and I'm Bob's big little brother. And once again, on behalf of Barbara, just thank you all for coming out today. And I want to say a thank you to the church for allowing us to come out here today. As you know, we've kind of been locked down this past year, and you know, this place is special. Probably a little over 4 years ago, I asked Bob to come to one of our Freedom Committee meetings, and we used to meet in the community center over in Costa Mesa. And then they tore that down, so we moved into the gym, and then they kicked us out of there. And so the church opened their doors to us to come here, and it's been such a blessing. And anyway, so thank the church for letting us come here. And one of my good friends and brother, Chief Petty Officer Don Hall, worked at Hoover Printing, and he did the programs for me and did an amazing job, and so I appreciate that. Also, the Pizza Bakery right in Newport Beach. John is a good friend of Bob's and mine, and he's donated the pizza and salad for after the ceremony today. Thank those guys for that. And then the Freedom Committee of Orange County, who's going to do a bell ceremony, and then they donated a flag. And then Jim Grimm, my friend, is videotaping for those who can't come today. As you know, we have some family out of state in Hawaii and Texas, and so it'll be a blessing to them to see this today. So Bob was born, once again, February 1944, and I just like to back it up a little bit and tell you that really the only reason a lot of us are in this room today, my brothers, my kids, my nieces, the only reason is because of World War II. And you say, well, how is that? Well, my mom's family lived in Oklahoma, and during the 30s, as you know, we had a depression in this country. And then pushing through into the early 40s, there was a big drought through Oklahoma. My grandfather was a farmer by trade, and so it was very difficult. He had picked up a job doing some work on a dam in Oklahoma, but it just was not sustaining them. So they moved to California in June of 1941. And then if you all remember, in December of 1941, December 7th, the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor. Well, my grandfather at the time, they moved actually to Westminster, California in June, and he was working in the farm area. And if you know anything about history of Orange County, it was not Hispanics that were farming at that time, it was Japanese. And so after the war started, all the Japanese got interned in Poston Internment Camp in Arizona. And so my grandfather started looking for work. He actually wanted to join the service, but he had polio when he was a child. And so he did the next best thing and got a job with South Coast Company as a welder. And they built ships, Navy ships, right down in Newport Harbor. If you know where Spaghetti Factory is, right behind that is South Coast Shipyard. That used to be South Coast Company. And they built gunboats and patrol craft for the Navy right down there in Newport Harbor. So that's my mom's story. And so they moved from Westminster to right across the street from the Spaghetti Factory. And the house isn't there any longer. It's been remodeled to a two-story. But if you ever go to Spaghetti Factory, there's an old green house right next to it, and it looks almost identical to that. Now my dad, he lived in Texas, rural West Texas, in a little town called Rowena. And his family farmed cotton. And his parents both died when he was very young. And so, you know, he went through the 8th grade, but he was farming full-time as a young man. And they had about 320 acres of cotton. When the war started, he joined the Army Air Corps. After boot camp and training, he was stationed at the Santa Ana Army Air Base. And for those of you who don't know, we're actually standing right now on that ground. That was a big base. If you know Costa Mesa, it went from Baker to Harbor to Newport to Bristol. That big square was the Santa Ana Army Air Base. And they trained pilots prior to them deploying. They had a lot of different areas of mission here in the Santa Ana Army Air Base. And it's not like the military today where you go work and then you go home at night like my son back there. It was wartime, so unless you had a pass, you stayed on the base all the time. And so guess what happened when the soldiers got a pass? They went down to Newport to hunt for girls. I'm just saying. And so he met my mom down in Newport, and they met about a year before they married, and the rest is history. And so Bob started out his life at Newport Beach, and for the duration of the war, they were surrounded with my mom's family. After the war, they moved back to the farm in Rowena, and after less than 2 years of hard times and another drought condition, you know, because back then, they didn't have like irrigation systems like we have today. They were praying for rain, you know. And so if there's a drought time frame, it's hard times back there. And anyways, after a couple of years, my mom's like, we're going back to Newport. And so they came back to Newport Beach, and he spent a good amount of his lifetime in Newport Beach. Once again, Greg kind of already talked about the schools he went to. Now, when he went to Ensign Junior High, it was like one of the first classes there at Ensign Junior High, and he started playing the saxophone. And so one of his loves was the saxophone. He played in junior high, high school, and Orange Coast College. And he also excelled in Spanish through high school and college. Now, when Bob was a junior at Newport Harbor High School, the Navy League and the recruiting district came to the school. They set up a ship visit and a cruise on the USS Tortuga. And so they loaded up the boys and they took them out to sea for a day. And really that day changed his life. You know, he really enjoyed that time out on the ship, out at sea. And so, you know, I kind of just wanted to talk for a minute about a legacy. You know, legacies are passed on down a lot of times to your kids, but it can be to your brothers too. And so because of Bob making that choice to go in the Navy, I think it had a lot to do with my brother Larry going in the Navy. And then for me going in the Navy, you know, he set that example and that model of, you know, serving his country as my dad did before him. And so anyways, he kind of set his sights on checking out the Navy. My dad had a co-worker who was drilling at the reserve base there in Tustin, which is where the lighter than air base is, where the blimp hangars are. And so he went down, checked it out, and signed up. And the next thing you know, he's enlisting in the Navy. And they had a program back then. He deferred his time in active duty for 4 years to go to college and finish his college. So right after he graduated Newport Harbor High School in 1961, he went off and went to boot camp. And after that, he came back and went to college. So he went to Orange Coast College, and then he went to what is now Cal State Fullerton, but back then it was called Orange State College at the time. But he only went for 2 years, and then he stopped and, let's see. So during college, he was in a bowling league, and with my folks, and they kind of needed a fourth. He'd known Barbara for a few years at Orange Coast College, and so they got together, and they basically spent about the rest of their lifetime together. And it's a beautiful story. So they were married in March of 1965, and then he reported to a heavy air squadron in Sanford, Florida. It was an attack squadron, and shortly after he got there, and I read some of his letter, he said, being a yeoman in the reserves is not like being a yeoman on active duty. And so one of his chiefs who had just had duty at the yeoman school in Bainbridge, Maryland said, you need to go to the school. It'll really help you on your second class exam, because by that time he was already in E4. So he went to Bainbridge, Maryland for just a few weeks, and this A school, and then he took some leave, came and got Barbara, and they moved out to Florida. He wasn't there very long, and the next thing you know, he made second class petty officer, or E5, in the Navy. But the problem was they didn't have any billets for E5s. He was slated to go back to California with the heavy air squadron, which was getting ready to deploy to Vietnam. But they didn't have any billets for E5, so he was reassigned to go to Admiral's staff on the USS Wasp, which is an aircraft carrier, out of Boston, Massachusetts. So basically they loaded up what they could in the car and they moved to Boston, and just like the Navy is, you know, they got their way before their stuff did. So I think they were roughing it for a little while before their stuff caught up with them there in Boston. Bob spent quite a bit of time at sea. I hadn't realized how much time he spent at sea. It sounded like he was at sea a couple weeks and home a couple weeks, and he was going a lot of time at sea. One of the things, just to highlight for his naval career, the USS Wasp, he was on Admiral's staff, but they picked up 2 of the Gemini missions, Gemini 9 and Gemini 12. Those missions were precursors to the Apollo mission. And so very interesting stuff, basically, I know when Bob started with Freedom Committee, he says, I don't have a story. And I go, yes, you do. First of all, you went to boot camp. That's a story. Okay. Second of all, going on an aircraft carrier and doing time at sea, that's a story. But having that part and seeing those Gemini missions come out of the sky, he actually got to witness the landings and then talk to the astronauts and just be part of that. It's just amazing. Bob's time got up in the Navy early in 1967, so they packed up again and moved to Southern California. Reading a bunch of letters that he wrote to my mom, the consensus was Florida was too hot and rainy, and Boston was way too cold and freezing, and he couldn't wait to get back to California. Bob had done some part-time work for the post office. And a matter of fact, I don't know how true this is, but Barb could probably tell me, but he told me that he used to ride a bike from Riverside Station to East Bluff with mail on it. That's gnarly. I don't know. I ride bikes sometimes, and that's a big hill, getting up Jamboree. So he had worked there part-time in college. He got back to California, took the test and applied, and was accepted to the post office. He delivered around Balboa Island for 25 years and vehicle maintenance for another 10. One of the things I saw on Larry's Facebook was a friend of ours who was a fireman in Newport. His mom lived down on the island, and she found out Bob had passed. And one of the things that she said was she just loved Bob. She loved to see him come. And, that was the thing about Bob. I always heard that, he was the best. And just people enjoy talking to Bob. The more that he was around, and he was so well read, he knew a lot about a lot of things. And so it didn't matter who he was talking to, he could relate, or he could he was just a great guy. I know my brother and I, Bob was 18 years my senior. Mine and my twin brother, where is he? There he is. My twin brother Jerry back there. He was 18 years my senior. So when we were kids, a lot of times we go to Bob and Barbara's house. Now, those were such fond memories. And I don't know if it's because they had like 50 kids on their cul-de-sac, which you can get in a lot of trouble with 50 kids on the block. And or if it was the great tickets that he scored to Angel games from his postal customers, which were great. We got great seats to Angel games. But it was just such a fond memory of going and spending time with them. And to be honest with you, we weren't that close after that. A couple times a year, see each other, and just not very close. But the last 4 years, I would say, has just been such a blessing to invite him to come to Freedom Committee. And he so enjoyed talking with, I know I see some of our members here today of the Freedom Committee, and he just so enjoyed having that fellowship with veterans and going and talking to the kids at the schools. And I know for me, we would come and something our dad taught us so long ago was to be on time. And so Bob and I are always on time, but the problem that we have is we're usually like really early. An example was today, the people that maintenance this building came about 9 o'clock and they said, hey, we're here to help. I go, it's already all done. And they go, wow, what, did you stay overnight? And but that was Bob. Bob would get here. We had our meetings, Freedom Committee meetings, started at 11:30. And, Scott would always say, be here around 10:30 to set up. And so Bob started about 9:30, and then it ended up about 9 o'clock. And many times I'd be at my house, which is about 8 minutes up the road, and Bob would say, are you coming? I go, Bob, it's like 9 o'clock. Well, I'm here. And so, but it was great because I'd come down and we would just talk. We'd set up and we would just talk. And, we got really close. And, he was just a great guy to be around. And, he just, I don't know about you, but I know I'm going to miss him an awful lot. And so, God bless you guys. Thank you all for coming out. And You know, I want to thank Greg too. Where is he? Chaplain Greg over here. You know, he knows 3 Tegel boys from 3 different venues. Okay, because Greg's wife's parents was Bob and Barbara's best man and maid of honor in their wedding. My brother Larry worked for Newport Fire, and Greg worked for Newport Fire for a little while. And we used to go to church up the street at Harbor Trinity, so I knew Greg from there. And so just through these series of events, you know, he just knows our Tegel family so well, and it's just such a blessing to have him here today to talk to you guys. And I'll open it up if Larry or Jerry want to come up right now. Did you guys want to say a few words? And then after that, I'm going to show a video so you guys can spur some memories for your open mic time.
I wrote some notes down too, but they're a lot smaller. Anyway, like Gary was saying, Bob was 18 years older than them, and he was 6 years older than I was at the time. So, the whole time. Anyway, one of the things that I remember early on with his fact is about the time that Gary and Jerry were born, is that I was 12 years old, Bob was 18. He was going to Orange State College at the time, and he started, I think he kind of started thinking about being the big brother kind of thing, because all of a sudden he started doing things with me, I think maybe to help get me out of the house away from these guys. But one of the things we did was he took me to Disneyland for the day, and one of his buddies from college was working there, and he was the captain of the Mark Twain. So Bob took me up to the top of the bridge on the Mark Twain while it's going around Tom Sawyer's Island, and I was able to steer the boat and all that kind of stuff and get a little certificate from Bob's buddy that worked there. And that was kind of a lot of fun. And while I was going to Orange State College, which became Cal State Fullerton, and their mascot's a Titans elephant. Well, they had these annual elephant races, and it was on the football practice field, and surrounding the field was a whole bunch of orange groves. And anyway, we went there after I stayed the day in his dorm room, because he lived in the dorms at the college. And then we went out to the elephant races, and at one point they had a couple elephants with guys on top of them, and they were riding them down the field. I don't know what happened, but one of them got spooked and took off and went running through the orange groves. And the orange trees were just the right height to where they pretty much didn't bother the elephant, but the guy on the top was getting beat to death with the oranges and the branches and stuff. So that was pretty funny. But one of the other things, he took me to I guess they had a Peter Pan play at Orange Coast College, and so he took me to that. I started seeing a lot more of him at that time, which was kind of nice, because with the age difference, you know, when I was young, we didn't spend a lot of time together because he was so much older. But then, as Gary was saying, you know, he started getting things in common with Bob later on. And the thing that drew Bob and I kind of back together was we both enjoyed motorcycle riding. He had a small motorcycle, like a 500cc Honda, and I had a number of motorcycles. And at one point we joined a motorcycle touring group, and we did trips and all around. One year my wife and I did a trip from Mexico to Canada called the Three Flags Ride over Labor Day weekend. Well, the year after we actually rode it, the club that Bob and I belonged to did a checkpoint up in Santa Clarita on the way back, because that year, every other year they alternated north and southbound traffic going from Canada to Mexico. Anyway, so we did this checkpoint in Santa Clarita, and then at the end of the ride, it ended in Tijuana, and they had a banquet at the end of the rally. And so Bob and I decided we were going to go down to the banquet, so we got a hotel room in San Diego, and then went across the border on our motorcycles into Tijuana to this hotel that was having a banquet. And it went okay, but we didn't stay too long. We decided to want to get back across the border. And we're going through Tijuana with the traffic and everything, and all of a sudden, and I'm leading, going back to the border to get across. And I look at my mirrors, I don't see him anywhere. And I don't know where he went. And I'm thinking, oh man, Barb's gonna kill me. I lost Bob in the middle of Tijuana. So anyway, I ended up doubling back and found where he had, I don't know why, I never knew why he didn't follow me where we're going. But anyway, that was kind of a nice experience to think about and laugh. But like I was saying, he just seemed to be enjoying the big brother when I was, 12 and 13 years old, doing a bunch of stuff together. The last, quite a few years, Bob and Barb usually came out to our house. We live out in Riverside County in Menifee, and they'd come out we'd have Thanksgiving together with Sherry's mom, and so we're spending a little bit more time with him then. And one thing when you think about Bob, the picture that's on the program of him holding his plaques that Gary gave him with a big smile on his face, that's how I remember him. And I posted that on my Facebook page so that every morning when I turn the thing on, I've got his smiling face looking. Thanks.
Any notes? I'm just going to kind of wing it. I'm Jerry, Gary's twin, Larry's younger brother, and I just wanted to, for me, I have a lot of memories. Most of my memories with Bob and Barb from when we were little kids, going to their house on Benchley. And playing with all the kids there, but to me, like Gary had mentioned, with Bob, one thing that impressed me was he knew a lot of stuff about a lot of things. He had a lot of hobbies, and for me and Gary, he liked to involve us in those things. He taught me a lot of things, riding a horse, we took a lot of, I have a lot of memories of snow skiing with Bob and Barb in the motorhome. We used to ride bikes all over the place. But a lot of really good, fun childhood memories I have. And I always admired and respected him as a person and a brother. And the fact that he stayed married for almost 56 years. It's a great accomplishment, something for me to, try to live up to, try to accomplish. It's unfortunate because I live in Texas now with my wife Sally and her kid, our daughter Angela. So I haven't really been able to spend a lot of time with Bob recently, and I do feel bad about that. But he was a awesome, wonderful brother, and he will be greatly missed.
Thank you guys, giving us a little bit of a glimpse into the Tegel life. At this time, if you'd like to share a story, we'd love to hear that. We'd love to hear about Bob and your life. So if you'd like to come up.
We're going to do that. You wanted to do the video first, I think.
Do you want to do the video first?
I mean,
Okay, I'm the one that made the schedule, so we're going to do the video and then we'll let you.
Your point?
I made the schedule, not my wife. So. So now, if you'd like to come up and share a short memory.
Can we come up there?
Sure.
Okay. Hi, my name is Bonnie Lippincott, and I met Bob at the post office. About 1992, my husband Gordon and I both worked for the Corona Del Mar post office, and they decided that our post office wasn't big enough down there in Corona Del Mar, which it wasn't. So they moved all of us up to Newport Beach office. First time we met Bob, he was complaining to Gordon, good-naturedly, that my husband moved him down one spot on the seniority list. So that was our introduction to Bob, and he was always fun. He was always great. We participated in a lot of union things together. Barbara, I know, worked for the post office, and so we knew her then too. But even after he retired, we would meet up and do a lot of things. And I remember him coming to one of our muscular dystrophy walkathons with his shortwave radio so that all the kids could see about it. And then after I retired, I met Barbara at the Quilt Guild I joined. I didn't meet her, I already knew her. And then we would have lunch afterwards, and Bob would come and meet us for lunch, and we'd talk about old times. And then he joined some group that met on Wednesday. That must be the freedom thing. And then he didn't come anymore. But I still got to see him at various things, so thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hello everyone, my name is Vic Real, and I'm a member of the Freedom Community Orange County. That's where I met Bob and Gary and many of these people here. The reason I'm speaking today is because I feel privileged that they use my features, my face, in various pictures in this presentation. Thank you, Gary. I became acquainted with Bob during a meeting. I normally would sit on the table on this end of the place, and Ed Moore, another Marine fellow, helicopter flyer, Gary and myself would sit together. And then eventually Bob started coming in. But he was so quiet, he was so bashful. He didn't have a story to tell. I persuaded him to do that anyways, because he did have a story from the day he was born. I'm proud to be his friend. Thank you.
My name is Ed Moore. I'm a member of the Freedom Committee, and I sat at the table with Bob and Super Chief. I used to call him Super Chief. And Bob and I would sit there and with Victor, and he would kid me about being a Marine. And I said, well, you know, it takes about 20 of you guys to make up one Marine. So we carried on a bit back and forth. He was genuinely a very, very nice man. He and his brother. And I wouldn't miss this event for anything. I'm very sorry for your family. I lost my brother in February, so I know the pain that you go through. God bless you all for coming. Thank you.
Hello, my name is John Kraft. And I have been so honored to be here today and to be a friend to Bob and Gary. They have been unbelievably supportive to the community, as you know, but it really is very, very, very personal with me. Bob took an interest in my sons in their decision to join the armed forces, and in a way that I couldn't relate to that question, but they did. And Bob, you know, And Gary did that for other people too. So their service to the community and to the armed forces is very deep. Also, they were, I'll just say, religious in meeting at our family's restaurant to double date. We would see Barbara and Bob after her treatments, and I learned firsthand what being a faithful husband through thick and thin, health and sickness looked like. So they continued to mentor me as an adult, and that was very important. So I just want to do a shout out for them as pillars of this community. I missed the first part of the service, so I didn't get to hear some of the testimonies, but I just want to thank them. I want to thank them from the bottom of my heart for shaping my 2 and possibly even 3 sons in serving this nation, and also basically putting bread on our table every time they came to the pizza bakery and insisted in paying full fare. I wouldn't take anything for free or a discount even. I tried many times. So I want to thank you for letting me speak, and thank you for your friendship and support.
We'll have some time afterwards that you can share out on the patio. Gary told you that I'm just not some guy found in the yellow pages. I know 3 of the brothers. I met Jerry for the first time today. When I worked for the Newport Beach Fire Department, I already knew Bob and Gary, and then I met Larry. And I was a civilian employee, and one of my responsibilities every day was to go to the post office and pick up the mail for the city. And the mail was generally parking tickets and water department payments. And that's why they had the fire department picking it up and taking it. And Bob saw me one morning, and he figured out that I was coming in every morning. So he would meet me at the door with these boxes of mail loaded on a cart so that I didn't have to stand in line. And then a lot of times later in the day, I'd come across the ferry and coming across the island going to that fire station, and I'd see Bob out traveling around Balboa Island, and we'd wave, and it was special to me. And you all know, if you knew Bob, you knew you mattered. And it's a privilege to be here today with you guys. But, you know, I always ask, why do people come to a service like this? Probably every person here has someplace else or something else they could be doing right now. But you all chose to be here because Bob touched your life in a special way. He touched my life. When my wife and I first started dating, we were going over to Grandma Betty and Grandpa Harley's. And I met Bob, and I knew I mattered to Bob. And just for the record, we still have Grandma Betty's chili every Christmas Eve. So. We all respect Bob, and that's why we're here. We're going to miss Bob. And we're here to support Larry, Jerry, and Gary because they lost their brother. And he was a big brother. And he probably had a little bit to do with how they turned out. And I know these two, and I have a pretty good idea with Jerry too, that if you ever needed something, you could talk to one of these guys and they'd do whatever it took to get you that, if you really needed it. And I watch Gary on Facebook. I've watched the kids grow up, and now the grandkids, and there's some integrity in that family. And I'm sure Bob had a part in that. Barbara, we're here for you. Bob loved you, and he served you. And I don't ever remember hearing my in-laws say Bob or Barbara. It was always Bob and Barbara, like it was one person. And I knew if I was going to see Bob, I was going to see Barbara. A few years ago, I bumped into them down at Hope Hospital when I worked there, and I guess they had been juggling knives or something, and Barbara caught one with her foot. But it was, I hadn't seen them in years, but it was like we had just seen each other the week before. They were just friends, and I felt then like they cared for me. And I know their parents kind of took my mother-in-law under their wing and taught her a lot of things. And they were the same way. They would come alongside. We heard about this man's family, his son's going in the military. And I was thinking of Gary's story. Wow, I wish in high school I had been able to go out on a Navy ship. That would have been a cool field trip. Better than a library, but that would have been a good field trip. We did get to go to the post office once, so that's good. There's another caring person that I want to share with you. In John 3:16 and 17. A lot of people just use 16, but I like 17 also. It says, "For God so loved the world that he gave his one and only Son, that whoever believes in him shall not perish, but have everlasting life." For God did not send his Son to the world to condemn the world, but to save the world through him. God cares about every one of you, and he loves you enough to send his Son to die for you. I'm not a perfect person, and if you don't believe that, I know a couple people that would attest to that. But God took me just like I am. And he loves me, and I know I'm spending eternity in heaven with him. And if Bob was able to be here right now, he would tell you that definitely there is a heaven and there is a hell. And we get to make the choice of where we're going. And if you don't know, please, there's pizza. I'm going to be outside. That's just a given. Come talk to me. I'd love to share more with you about the God that loves us. I kind of looked at God, Bob had a lot of the same characters. He cared about people. I'm sure every hobby he got involved in, there's people that knew Bob and knew he cared. And I kind of think he got involved in them because of the people. And I think it's so awesome that he shares the history of the military with young people, because unfortunately we don't get that anymore. And our military history is so important to this country, and we're forgetting it. I'm going to pray now, and then we're going to have a bell ceremony, and that is so precious. So let me pray right now. Father God, I thank you for the blessing that Bob was in all of our lives. I ask that you would give his family peace and comfort. Father, I lift up Barbara to you. She lost more than all of us. But I pray that you will keep Bob's memory alive in her and hold her up and give her comfort through this time. Father, I thank you for sending your Son for us, and I thank you for these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Bow your head while we have a word of prayer. Our Heavenly Father, thou great commander of all souls, in whose infinite wisdom, justice, and mercy our sailor has ended this earthly voyage, grant we beseech thee that we who are still to continue our course amid earthly joys and friendships, dangers, temptations, and troubles may evermore be protected by thee, and finally come without hesitation to the haven of eternal salvation. Amen. Fair winds and following seas, Bob.
Today, the family would like to ask you to join us out here on the patio and have some food and share your memories of Bob. And I thank you all for coming. Amen.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, well, that's what Scott, he has his sport coat. I said, you probably don't own one.
I have one that I can